Good morning. I'm Denise Griffitts, and this is your partner in Success Radio. Our topic today is Who Are You Becoming? And I'm speaking with Jonathan Fanning on purpose, wake up calls, and living intentionally. So, what is the most important question you'll ever ask yourself? I bet it's not about what you're achieving, but it should be about who you are becoming. And our show today is sponsored by Damon Lemby. Damon is the CEO of Learnit, Learnit, and a strong advocate for building high performance teams through continuous learning and leadership development. Develop stronger managers, higher performing teams, and an AI ready workforce, excuse me, through interactive learning programs and live workshops. And if you're serious about growing your organization and your people, be sure to connect with Damon on LinkedIn and explore what Learnit has to offer. It's going to be one of those days. Damon, thank you for supporting your partner in Success Radio. And it's Monday. If anybody wants to know, it is Monday. So now back to my guest. Jonathan Fanning is a leadership development expert. He's an internationally recognized speaker, entrepreneur, coach, and devoted dad. He is also the author of several impactful books, including Who Are You Becoming? And Creativity Unleashed, both of which challenge leaders to think deeper, act with intention, and step fully into who they're meant to become. And I have both of these books right here on my desk. And today we're focusing on who are you becoming? It's a powerful question and an even more powerful conversation. And I am pleased to say Jonathan will be joining us again soon to dive into Creativity Unleashed. Good morning, Jonathan, and welcome to your partner in Success Radio. It's good to have you here.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
You know, we had a terrific month or two, I don't know, it's a while back. We had a great conversation during the pre-interview, and I remember thinking, because I saved those and I go back to them just before we're going to get on the show. And I'm thinking we could have just recorded that and called it good. But we want to talk twice. You're going to be coming back again. So tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I got a few wake up calls in my life, and I think we all do, but I got a wake up call, a big one. I was in a car accident. It was one of those warm day, cold night, light rain, black ice. And if you're in the South, maybe you don't know black ice, but I live
We
up.
do. We do.
So yeah, and my car started sliding and hit the guardrail, spins into the middle of the road, and two tractor trailers at highway speeds plowed through my car. And the second one, I watched it coming towards my door. I leaned away, and then I'm unconscious for a bit. And when you get a wake up call like that, where you think it could be the end, it usually gets us thinking some different questions. And I started really thinking, like, Jonathan, like, if this was the end, if this was the final scoreboard, how'd you do? And I thought, well, you did well in your career. Um, you did well with a lot of things that you wanted to do, but you weren't as patient, you weren't as caring, you didn't enjoy life, you weren't as appreciative. And I just, in the recovery after that accident, I really started thinking that there's a big question. Who are you becoming? And we don't spend a lot of time on that question in our lives. We don't spend a lot of time on, wow, am I becoming more patient or more focused? Do I have more courage today than I did a year ago? And those things change everything. So I started really just diving into the idea of, can I close the gap? Can I close the gap between who I am and who I could be? And I started to look at different people who had done it well. Some people from history, some people I knew, some people I knew but didn't know that well. And I tried to figure out, could I make a simple plan that would actually work for me to be a better person? And the reality is, I kept coming up with complicated things. And Denise, I think sometimes we like complicated things because then I don't have to do anything with it.
That's exactly right. I do it all the time. And then I have to sit and have a talk with myself.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And but a month could go by, or a year could go by, or several years could go by while we have this complicated thing, And so for one simple example, I decided before the accident, I realized I'm not really a good listener. I was very good at nodding people on, and I meet a lot of people who are great at nodding people on. They're really good at pretending to listen. So I decided, I said, okay, I'm going to practice listening to people. And then it took a while, but I started doing it. And what I said is, I'll do it once a day. Somebody, whoever I meet after lunch, I'll practice listening to them. And then eventually I shifted it and I said, I'll not just practice listening because that seems like it's easy for me to think I did a good job with that, but I'll practice trying to be a tour guide for a really great conversation where they will leave the conversation saying, I really enjoyed talking with that guy. That was great. Like I'm energized. It was an engaging conversation. And I'll never forget one time I'm in the middle of this little thing and I had lunch and I'm flying to Des Moines, Iowa from Chicago, connecting flight. I had a keynote in Des Moines, Iowa. And I thought, whoever sits next to me on the plane, I'll practice, help them have a great conversation. I'm sitting there in my seat, waiting for whoever's going to sit next to me. And this woman starts walking down the middle aisle and she is talking to herself as she walks. And I don't know if you've ever spent an hour and 17 minutes with someone who could talk nonstop.
Unfortunately, I have. And I learned very quickly to never get in her company again because I was about to lose my mind.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah. So I'm sitting on the plane and this woman stops near my seat and she looks at the number and she says, "Is this seat number whatever?" And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, "Abort the mission, abort the mission." You can practice listening tomorrow or later or someone else. But she ends up sitting next to me and I said I mentioned we need this simple process to help close the gap between who I am and who I can be. And part of my simple process is just kind of to give myself a little reality check regularly. Like I put it 0 to 10. Like 10 is amazing. How you doing with this? 0 to 10. First couple seconds, she sits next to me. I'm not even a 0. I'm like a -8. I'm like intentionally going like I'm going to get my laptop out and work on the next book. I'm going to do something else. Um and then I thought, okay, that's not good. Let's get closer to a 5 or a 6 or an 8. So I looked at her and I said, w- w- how's your day going? And she talked for a while. And then I thought, this is going to kill me. This is going to kill me. And I thought, but if you're committed, Jonathan, if you're committed to closing this gap, you got to do something. So I said, what brings you to to Chicago or Des Moines? And she tells me something about grandkids, and then she goes on, for 7 minutes, and I'm thinking I'm a -4 again, I'm a -6. I'm like, I'm not there, I'm not listening, I'm not engaged. And I thought, what would I have to ask her that I'd be super interested in, so that I wouldn't be pretending, because if we're pretending, we're not really there, right? And I thought, well, I said, my kids are these ages. I have two daughters. I said, "My kids are these ages. When your kids were that age, what's a really amazing lesson you learned?" And then, Denise, our conversation shifted, and it hit me that if you really wanna close the gap between who you are and who you can be, me and you, we need simple training. It's almost like we need to hit the gym, or we need to I coach, travel soccer. And I constantly tell the kids, I'm like, you need touches. You need to touch the ball 1,000 times a day if you want to get good. E Period. And I need practice listening if I'm gonna get good. So I mapped out this process for myself where I said, "I'm gonna close the gap in an area, and I'm gonna do it really, really intentionally." And one of them was listening. Another one that I picked was courage. I decided I wanted to have more courage, right? Because you could measure your life by moments of courage. Little moments where you have courage to do something, to decide something, to change your path, to decide not to do something, to go and meet a new person or to start a new venture. And I thought I'm going to practice courage. And when I started with that idea of courage, my oldest daughter was not even 6 years old. She was maybe 5.5. And I was flying back, I think from Sydney, Australia. I was speaking there. And on my flight back, I'm thinking, like, if my kids get only one lesson out of growing up in my house, what would I like it to be? And I thought, well, it's probably courage. So this is a late flight, long flight. next morning I'm up and I'm not really conscious, but I'm sitting there at breakfast and I'm making pancakes for my 5-year-old. And I said, Ella, I said, we're gonna do Brave and Daring Day today. She's 5.5 and she's looking at me like, sounds good, with a smile. And then at one point she finally says, what does that mean? Like, what is Brave and Daring Day? And I hadn't even thought of it, but I had decided like we could practice courage. That's all I had decided, right? Because almost everything we get better at by practicing it. So I said, we'll practice. We'll do things today, Ella, that you need to have courage to do. And she's looking at me, and then she gets this big smile, and she says, "Do you mean maybe we could climb that thing at the park that mommy won't let me climb?" And I thought, Denise, uh oh,
Yeah.
we're, we're
Why didn't you see that coming?
I right? I should have. And I'm thinking, well, you can't start Brave and Daring Day with a chickening out. So I sort of looked at her and had this little nod going on in my head, and she's looking at me, and sometimes I think people can read our minds, and especially my daughters. She looks at me and she says, "Oh, we don't have to tell mommy."
Or ask her. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And at this point, I'm in big trouble because I'm thinking like we're gonna practice courage and deceit all in the same day. It's gonna be but she's like, she wanted to climb this thing. It's not part of the playground. It's a pergola over a bench that's probably 12 feet high or so. And it's not really designed to be climbed or climbable. Um, but we get down there and she's looking at it and she starts trying to climb it, but there's nothing to climb. It's just beams holding it up. And there's this little tree near it. So she starts climbing the little tree, but it's a small tree and it's swaying as she gets a little higher up. And I'm watching thinking, this might not go well. This might not go well. But
I'm
Brave and
gonna have
Daring
to
Day,
tell
right?
my wife that we're at the
Yeah, yeah.
hospital. Can you come get us?
Right, right, right. But brave and right, if you're practicing courage, there will be things that might not go well. And she keeps going and I'm trying not to look like, uh-oh, like I'll catch you, but I'm not too far from the tree. Finally, she gets pretty high up and she's hanging sort of sideways upside down because this thin branch is bending and swaying. And she ends up grabbing onto the top of this pergola thing and she ends up on top of it. And she's pumped. I mean, she's excited beyond description. And part of it, I think, is that like we don't really build confidence by patting someone on the back for something easy. I think we build confidence by doing something today that maybe we were afraid to do yesterday or weren't sure we could do yesterday. And she had just done that. She had just done something like that. And she's just beaming. She's thrilled. One moment of courage, right? One moment of courage. And I'm looking at her. I take a picture and this kid at the playground that day, he's probably 8 or 9. He comes running over and almost knocks me over because he's so excited and I don't know who he is. He says, how'd she get up there? Did you put her up there? Could you put me up there? Could you help me? And I'm looking at this kid like, I don't know you, but go climb, go climb, go do it. And he was about to, but then his mother came over to say hello. But she didn't really come over to say hello. She came over fast and furious. And she picked up
I'm
her
not laughing at you, I'm laughing with you.
yeah, yeah. She picks up her little guy and she reminds him that he's afraid of heights.
Oh, geez.
And I thought, this whole who are you becoming? Like either we're doing it on purpose in a direction we've chosen, or someone else in the world will choose a direction for us. And I don't think that mother sat down or had a flight back from Australia like I did, where she was thinking, or had a car accident, a wake up call, where she decided, I want to teach my young son to be afraid of stuff. But I think she was doing a pretty good job of it, you know.
Yeah, I'm
And
afraid so.
and Denise, it hit me that we don't always like holding up a mirror to ourselves. Like it's so easy for me to notice this mom doing that with no mirror involved. But if I hold up the mirror, I have to look in the mirror and think like, do I do that sometimes? Do I do things that help me become less courageous regularly, or help my kids, or help the people that work with me, or if I start a business, to help my team to be less courageous. And I don't love the mirror, but who, so I started taking that brave and daring day. Like, I mean, my daughter loved it. We do it just every now and then. I'm not the personality that I'm going to do it every single Saturday. But every now and then we do a brave and daring day. And Ella, my daughter, would jot down things. Usually she likes to draw, so she would draw pictures of things, and she'd say, "Brave and daring day. Can we do this? Can we do that? Can we do this? Can we do that?" And eventually one day we're coming home. We did a brave and daring day together, and my wife says to Ella, she says, "Dad, brave and daring day with Daddy today, right?" And Ella's like, "Yeah, yeah." And my wife says, "What does brave and daring day mean at dinner time?" And it's hilarious because Ella, like, her face immediately said, "I know what it means, and I'm not sure I like it." But she knew, like, it means try something, be more courageous in your what foods you'll taste, or maybe you'll help cook even, and Ella officially decided that Thursdays would be Try Something Thursday at our house. And every Thursday she'd try some new food. And at this point, my younger daughter, Maya, was starting to get involved a little bit in the brave and daring days, and Maya would come to me and say, "Daddy, is it Thursday?" And I'd say, "No, Maya, it's Friday, but it's almost Thursday, like 6 more days and we're there." And Maya would say, "Do you have to go to the store? Could you go to the store and find an ice cream I've never tried?" Because, Maya wanted to try something, but she didn't want it to be she'd try, like, black cherry ice cream.
Not escargot or, fried crawfish or something like that.
Not in the early phases. No,
No.
no, no, no.
I love both of them, by the way, but you have to think yeah, escargot is yummy,
Mm,
but you have
mhm.
don't look at it, just eat it. It's, kinda like oysters.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah,
But, yeah, it can be
yeah.
scary. I get where you're going with this.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just, so this idea, this "who are you becoming" idea, really it really hit me that we don't need something complicated, but it probably won't be comfortable either. And I think we want it complicated because then I don't have to do it, and we want it comfortable because then like I just dive in, and it's not either. It's neither of those. You
Were we
know,
created to be comfortable?
I don't
I
I don't
I
think
don't think
so.
so.
Yeah. I
Yes, it
I
does. But, yeah, I don't either.
yeah,
Once
I
you
mean,
get comfortable, you're just kind of flattened out, I think.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and, if you ask people about turning points in their lives, every single time they'll tell you about moments that were uncomfortable. And if you ask them about people who dramatically affected their lives, they'll tell you about somebody who told them something they needed to hear, or saw some potential in them that they wanted to try to live up to, where it was this, essentially, I guess, a wrestling with comfort, with, like, they dove into the discomfort. There's, Frederick Douglass said, "Struggle is necessary. It's not an option when you wanna go somewhere." Yeah, so what I started doing with this "Who Are You Becoming" plan is I started picking a theme. Every now and then I'd pick a theme. Usually it was for a couple weeks, and I'd stay with that theme. And, one of them was courage. Really simple thing for anyone to do around courage is jot down a couple things that would take your life in a positive direction, but take some courage. And if you want to step it up a notch, jot down some things that would take your life forward in a big, big way, but they might take a lot of courage. And so often it's not the hardest thing to do. I like to do it at like 11 o'clock at night, Denise, because then I have a lot of courage at 11 o'clock at night. I'm like, yeah, 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 write that down. You know, yeah, I'm writing my next book, and I'm like, you know what? Reach out to this person for a testimonial. Some author that I've never met. Call this person or stuff. And I write down stuff at 11 o'clock at night that the next morning I'm looking at it thinking like, who wrote that?
You know where I write that kind of stuff? I call them God winks.
There
Yeah,
you
I'm
go.
I'm a highly committed introvert. I like people just fine for 59 and 3/4 minutes, but after that, I have to go recharge. I just can't handle too much me time with other people. I don't dislike them, they just drain me. It's always been that way.
Sure.
But I
Yeah.
will deliberately, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, depending on what's going on in my very messy head, I will
Mm.
go take hot showers, hot enough to steam broccoli, no joke. And
Wow.
I go in because it relaxes me, and these God winks start downloading. Literally, that's where I get all these wonderful ideas. 2 kinds of ideas pop up. The ones and I can hear myself in my head saying, "Well, I'm going to do," or "We're going to do." That's ego. I don't even write those down. By the way, I take bathtub crayons in the shower with me, and I write them down. And then when you know, it dries out enough in there, it dissipates. I've got the ceiling fan on. Thankfully, I've got really tall ceilings, but I'll go take a picture of it, then wipe the stall down, and then you go, "Ooh, those are some great ideas." And I do write those down, and I do come back to them, but you have to focus, and I'm not even sure how to say this. You have to focus on when you know that you're waning, you're not paying attention, your courage is down, you're just irritated. Go take a hot shower. Go walk the dog. Get out of your own way.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not kidding. Yeah, I love that. I love the way you approach that. There's a chapter in the book called "Happen to the World,"
I know,
and
and I
it
wanted to
and
talk with
it's
you about that.
yeah, and it's very much around what you just described. It's like, what's going on in your life, and then how can I happen to this? Because it's so easy to let the world happen to you. It's so easy to let social media or the news or, emails or texts. I know a lot of people that first thing they do when they wake up in the morning is check their phone for something. And the phone just happened to your morning, and in the
So does
beginning,
email. Don't go
oh,
there in the morning.
yeah, yeah. And in the beginning of that chapter, I tell a story of a teacher I had in the 7th grade. She happened to our world, and in 7th grade, you're 12 or 13 years old, and most of the time, you're just like, "Okay, I have to take this class." But she would get up in front of the class, and she had hundreds of little things like this. But one day she gets up in front of the class. This is right after lunch, so we're even less engaged probably than most of the day. We're looking like, okay, great. It's towards the end of the year. It's getting nice out. Like you mentioned earlier, blue skies, beautiful blue skies. You're looking out the window thinking, I wish I was out there. And this teacher would get up in front of us, and this one time she does this dance and she starts clapping and pointing, and she's singing kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, phylum, class, order. And, she got our attention, and then she starts taking requests. She's like, who should I do it like? Run DMC, or should I do it like the Beatles? Should I do it like Madonna? Should I do it like, and she's doing version Michael Jackson. She's doing this kingdom, phylum, class, order, how living things are classified dance. And, we're just looking at her like, You're crazy." But she got our attention. She happened to the world, right? And then she stops and she just stares at us with this look like, huh. She says, "We should stand up and do the dance together." And I'll tell you, Denise, immediately we went from leaning forward, like, "Go, Mrs. Mail." Her name was Mrs. Mail. "Go, Mrs. Mail, you're tearing," to pretending we were reading the book. The person next to me whispers, like, "Do not make eye contact with the woman." Because she's like, we're like, "We're not standing up. We're 7th graders. We're not gonna stand up and dance." But she says, and she knew this, she understood how to happen to the world. She said, "Oh, why don't you use your chair as a prop and we could do a dance with the chair?" And at that, most of us are like, "Okay, I'll pick up my chair in class. That sounds great." So we're doing this dance and pointing one direction and then the other direction. And of course, we're looking back at the door, wondering when maybe a superintendent will walk by and take Mrs. Bale away, or somebody we know will walk by and be laughing at us. But then she says, "Why don't we do a Congo line?" And we just do it. We just because she knew how to happen to our world. And you fast forward a few weeks, there was a test. That was one of the questions. Nobody got it wrong. Nobody. And you could tell when people got there because they'd be tapping on their desk like kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, phylum, class, order. And over and over and over again, every kid in her class would get A's. Some of her peers didn't like that, you can imagine. But kids wanted to take her because she decided we would have fun, we would be engaged, we would enjoy learning, and her job was to happen to the world to make that happen, to make that possible. And I made that one of my "Who are you becoming" pillars. And recently, actually, a couple months ago, I took my family, 13 of us, to Ireland for 2 weeks. And the whole time I was thinking of Mrs. Mail. I was thinking like, it's easy to get frustrated because when you have 13 people, they all have different, schedules and different times they wanna have lunch and different places they wanna have lunch and different and, we're stopping for a bathroom break, driving around the Ring of Kerry, right? And, are we ever gonna get back in the car? You know? But when you think Mrs. Mail and happen to the world, you say like, "How can I happen to the world?" And like the 0 to 10, I love to use that as a mirror and say, right, like, I'll have moments where I'm not happening to the world, I'm letting the world happen to me, the weather's not great, right? There's traffic, there's a million things, there's a million ways that we let the world happen to us. But a really simple challenge with this one is to pick one relationship you have, and maybe you pick 2, maybe you pick 1 at work and 1 at home, and say, "All right, that relationship is okay. It's good." I like to do 0 to 10 just because it gives me a starting point. Let's say it's a 6 or a 7, and then to say, "Let's pretend that if it's gonna change at all, it's 100% on you happening to the world, not hoping that they do."
Yeah,
And it
hope is not a business plan.
No, no, but we do it anyway, right?
Oh,
Or we
yeah.
look back and say, "Well, this and this and this." But to go, all right, if I have to happen to the world, you know, what's one thing, 2 things I could do? I do a lot of work in the corporate world, and I constantly tell people, take one meeting you go to every single week. Maybe it's a Tuesday morning meeting. Every week it's an hour or 2 hours, whatever, and happen to that meeting. And maybe you give yourself like try to make it twice as engaging as it currently is, or make it twice as effective, or make it half as long. And it's in the real world outside of work, it's like going into a Saturday morning and saying, "How can I make this morning a lot more memorable and meaningful?" How
I
can I
love
make this
that.
how can I make this weekend a lot more memorable and meaningful? Or it's springtime now, right? Maybe you say, "Okay, over the summer, what's a thing I could do with one of my friends or one of my family members that would just be a thing we'd look back on. It would be intentional. It'd be a wow. That would be something to do, And it's wild because we sometimes, this question of who are you becoming. We sometimes stop asking. Maybe I could put it this way: we stop pursuing really good questions, and we end up just pursuing yesterday questions. Like, what are we going to do this summer? The same thing we did last summer, you know, rather than the question of like, wow, if I could design it. Years ago, a good friend of mine was playing baseball, professional baseball in Italy. And he'd ask me, he's like, "Hey, can you come help me coach in Italy?" And I would tell him, "Yeah, sounds good." You know, but what I meant is, yeah, sure, sure, when it's convenient, when it's when it's comfortable, when it's easy for me to take time off and go to Italy to coach baseball. And finally, he starts saying to me, he's like, "What day are you coming?" And I said, I don't know." And he said, "You got to come for at least a month to have an impact. Come help me coach the team. It'll take you a week before you kind of warm up to some of the players. A couple weeks, you can make an impact." And he said, "Give me the month. Give me the month." And I finally, Denise, I call it putting a stake in the ground. Like I finally booked the 2 flights. I had no idea work wise how I was going to take that time. But so often from this happen to the world perspective, as soon as we put a stake in the ground, our brain starts going, all right, how do I get there?
Yeah, let's figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. And I booked the flights. And then I said, well, wow, what do I do? I had just started, 6 months earlier, I had started a business. Like, what can I do with that business? Because there's a lot of expenses linked to it, and I don't have a team yet. I better find somebody who's really good, really quick, you know? Ugh. And I was doing a consulting project, and like, I got to figure that out too. But Denise, yeah, you start saying, okay, I mean, like I have a family member who, wow, he could use a good how do I put he could use a really good friend right now, and if I say like I'm going to be that, that's a stake in the ground. And then I start saying, how do I happen to that? Because the relationship's only okay right now. Right. And it's the same kind of thing with that make a meeting half as long or twice as effective or twice as engaging. I call it the four halves meeting challenge. But if you say I'm going to be the one that happens to it, you start thinking, well, who else in that meeting could I get on my side with this goal? And you start closing the gap.
And, and by the way, I'm gonna tell the audience, "Happen to the World." That is on page 105. It's chapter 5. Read it. Put a sticky note on. I don't mark up books. My childhood librarian would rear up and get me with her ruler, but I do have sticky notes all over this book. This is one of my favorite parts of the book. But, I mean, I wouldn't call it an issue, but I have a consulting client that some days I like her and some days I just can't stand her. It's very iffy. It really
Mhm.
is. And I got an email from her this morning that I instantly was offended by, and I shouldn't have been because this is her personality, and I have to take that into, consideration. So I opened up your book and I went, okay, where can I go in here to get me past me going, I don't like you. I'm almost through with her, so that's good. And I'm doing my best work with her because now I'm challenged. Again, I do not want to leave her with a bad taste in her mouth or me with one in mine. Will I ever work with her again? No, absolutely not. But what I will deliver will be excellent for her and has been all along, but she's a difficult personality. So I had to have a chat with myself about that this morning and then make a deliberate choice to not respond to it today while I'm still irritated. So I moved it over to tomorrow and I will respond with kindness, patience, and professionalism. But I can't do that today. I know I can't. So I moved it over a bit.
Mhm. Yeah, that's beautiful. It's the question of are you a thermometer or a thermostat?
Ooh, good one. Keep going.
And yeah, it's something I think about all the time because if I want today to be phenomenal, I can stop at any point in the day, and I mean, I get into like kind of broken record. I don't know if you can use that language anymore. But when you're on repeat, where you're in this rut, you're in this track, and there's a whole bunch of things like, but one for me is just stand up and like take a 2-minute walk, or I was doing work with BMW, and one of the execs there, he said sometimes I'm sitting in a meeting and it's starting to get to me, and he said I have this little routine. He says I bring a cold glass of ice water, not just cold water, but ice in it. And he said when something's starting to get to me, I'll pick up the glass and I'll let myself feel the cold, and I'll take a slow sip. And he says, and I'll just remind myself that like I can choose many different things right now. And he's like, just that one little sentence and that one little routine, he says it buys him the time to pull him out of that rut of like, okay, am I happening to the world or am I letting the world happen to me? Because all of us, Denise, deal with somebody like you described, where we go, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. We have a big family event coming up this weekend. Semi surprise birthday party for one of my family members, and there will be, let's say, 3 people there that don't get along that well. I don't know if you've ever experienced that in a group of people, but
No,
but
never.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But Mrs. Mail and that Mrs. Mail story kind of gives me the ability to say, I'm going to put a stake in the ground. I'm going to go and I'm going to pull one of those people aside and I'm going to ask them about something that can be the thermostat. Instead of just reading the temperature of the room, it can shift the temperature of the room for that one person in that one interaction. And the amazing thing is Denise, we use language today that says we don't have the ability to do anything about it.
Yeah,
When
I don't buy that. I really don't, and I will not use the word can't. I
yeah,
will use the word won't
yeah,
and
yeah,
don't, but I never say I can't because, look, I don't swim, largely
mhm,
because I'll drown, but I
right,
never say I can't swim. I say, "Well, I don't swim." That's it.
right,
That's
right.
all I need to say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a perfect way to say it. I got in trouble for that, when when my daughters were very young. My youngest daughter was on the trampoline with one of her friends, and my older daughter she was interacting with them, but she was jumping a lot. She's 4 years older. She was jumping a lot more aggressively, and at one point, my younger daughter's friend falls over and blah, 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 and she's crying. She goes in the house, and, my wife comes out the door, and my wife says, "Ella, why did you make, Maya's friend cry?" And Ella looks at my wife, and she says something that I say all the time, and I think you'd love this, Denise. Ella says, "I am not in charge of her feelings." And
Well, she's
and
not.
and
I
right,
agree
right,
with her.
but my wife at that point looks at my daughter and then looks at me, and I'm like, "It's true, it's true." But we use language, Denise. I mean, if you do nothing else, a game changer is to just pay attention to the language you hear, you use, not just out loud, but in your head,
Oh, that's the worst place.
and it completely takes away your ability to change something. As soon as I say, "Oh, that's frustrating me." No, it's not. I mean, you might let it, but to say it's frustrating you, I was talking to a CEO. You would love this guy. He takes 3 weeks off several times a year. He'll usually go fly somewhere and then take a slow cruise back. And he does it because he wants to make sure that he's not the bottleneck in any of his businesses. He starts businesses and grows them. And he's really good at solving problems and really good at making tough decisions and really good at hiring the right people and having tough conversations. So when he leaves, there's a hole in the business, right? Because if you're really good at all those things, people tend to lean on you for those things. And he says, "I leave for 3 weeks and I tell my team, I am completely out of touch for 3. If there's a medical emergency, here's a way to find me. But other than that, I'm not making any business decisions." And I asked him, I said, you're pretty busy lately." He said, "I don't use that word." I said, "Oh, okay." He said, "I use the phrase in demand." He said,
Ooh,
I like the phrase in demand a lot better."
right, and we hear this word busyness all the time, and I think is just a cop out.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I mean, Denise, that mirror metaphor or analogy, we notice it more in other people, but I'll say things that are saying I can't happen to the world all the time, or saying I can't be the thermostat all the time. And the more I start catching it, whew, it's a game changer for us. It's a game changer. I mean, I get
It
to
is, it
Mhm.
is. Listen, you know, I will tell you straight out because we all have these things that we say to ourselves, and they're not helpful. They're just not. But you do, like you just said, you have to catch them. And I had a business coach years ago. She listened to me whine. I was world class. I almost had a degree in it. And she was very quiet. And I thought, oh, she's gonna fire me, and I can't blame her. I'm whining. I mean, it was just I was sick of myself. And she said very quietly, "Denise, what are you tolerating?" I went, "Ah, crap."
Mm.
And she was right. And I asked myself that every single day. But we get in these you they're like this giant dent in your brain. You've just worn that path out. And I'll tell you honestly, if I ever had anybody in a Walmart parking lot speak to me the way I speak to myself sometimes, I would need bail money. So knock it off.
Yep.
Just stop doing that.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Catch it, replace it.
Oh, absolutely. And Denise, one of the things I find very, very powerful, and I think we're all wired differently, but still, the power of a story or an experience that you really connect to, because they give us like a homing device, and I'll give you an example. Um, I told this story a couple of years ago. I was doing some work at the U.S. Tennis Association. They were prepping for the U.S. Open, and I did a little leadership retreat for them. And I shared this story, and one of the people there was in tears at one point in the story. And I'll tell you the story, and then I'll tell you where. It's a true story, but years and years and years ago, I mean, decades ago, Gandhi was becoming more and more famous in India. And this mother decided to bring her son to see Gandhi. And she decided to do it because her son was diabetic and he would not give up sugar.
Oh,
And she just thought, like, and talk about a creative mother. She thought, well, if Gandhi will tell him, he'll listen to Gandhi, you know. And I mean, she was at her wits' end. Like, you can imagine being a parent with a kid, because eating sugar for a diabetic can kill you, and it was wreaking havoc on his body, on his health. So she does a 2-day walk with her son to where Gandhi is, and she gets finally a meeting with him, and she introduces herself, and she says, my son is diabetic and he won't give up sugar, and I thought that he would probably do it if you told him. So can you tell him to give up sugar? And Gandhi looks at the mother, and then he looks at the kid, and he pauses for a while, and the mother's kind of smiling because she's thinking he's gonna tell him. And Gandhi looks back at the mother and he says, "Can you please come back in 2 weeks?" And
why?
yeah, can you imagine? I mean, she's at like what? I walked 2 days to get here. I don't have the,
Yeah,
She leaves with her son, and 2 weeks later she comes back, sits down with Gandhi again, and she says, "I don't know if you remember, but I was here 2 weeks ago." He said, I remember you very well. And he looks at the boy and he says, please stop eating sugar. And then he
that was
looks at
it?
and then he looks at the mother, and the mother's like, uh, and she stands up and she's about to leave, and she gets near the door and she stops and she looks at Gandhi. And like I think most of us, she's not really happy. Even though she kind of got what she wanted, but it was 2 weeks later, and like there's a lot. There's a lot.
See, I'm puzzled.
Yeah.
What
And she looks
did the
back.
boy stop? I mean,
Yeah,
what happened?
she looks back and she says, "Why couldn't you tell him that when we were here 2 weeks ago?" And Gandhi said, "2 weeks ago, I was still eating sugar."
Oh,
And see, there's a famous quote from Gandhi that most of the world knows, and Gandhi said it, but he also actually lived it. And it's a complete game changer for our lives. He said, "Be the change you want to see in the world."
right. We all know that one.
We all know it. Yeah, but who do you know who does it? Almost all of us are like, "I wish that person would." Mrs. Mail, teacher, right? She happens to the world. Well, I'm a dad. I have 2 daughters. I have nieces and nephews. I have kids in my neighborhood. I have friends. Can I happen to the world twice as much as I currently do? Absolutely. That's where it's like, it's not maybe so complicated, but it's not comfortable. It is not comfortable. I was with the US Tennis Association, and this woman, she's just staring at me when I told that end, and she said, "My son wants to be a medic for the military, especially, he's studying medicine, but he's also studying psychology, and he wants to help people who have been through some pretty serious trauma." And she said he decided he had to go to some of the most war-torn places in the world in order to really understand who he was trying to help. And she said, "As a mom, I didn't want him to go." And she said, "And I think I get it a little bit now." We this whole "who are you becoming" question, it's a question that, it since that car accident, it never left me alone. And I hope that it's that gift to some of your listeners, where you sit there and you say, I could be a better friend tomorrow than I am today. I could apologize more than I normally do. I could have the courage to ask for forgiveness, or to put that dream out there, because a lot of us stop dreaming, because it takes courage to dream. It takes courage to even say a dream of yours out loud to yourself, let alone to anybody else. But game changer for us.
Absolutely. What I'm gonna tell you, when I opened this book, Who Are You Becoming? Chapter 1, it says, "Hanging from a bridge 106 feet above the ground should wake you up." I was hooked. That's all I had to read. I didn't put this thing down, and I'll tell you, when I get these books, they land, and I always do. I read these books 2.5 to 3 times.
Mm.
This one, and I'll tell you how that happens. It gets here, I take a picture, I send it to you, I send it to your booker. That's my system. And then I do the page flip. I wanna know what's in it. What are the chapters? What's going on here? Because it may be months before you're coming on the show, and I'm booked now until September. And right now we're in April, so you can imagine. But I always do the page flip, and then I go back and I read it, about a month or 2 before you're going to come on the show, because then I review it, Amazon, Goodreads, I have a system. Then I really read it again before you're coming on the show, because I want to be familiar with it. I bypassed 2 and 3. From the minute I read this book and I read that opening statement, I sat down with it and didn't put it down until I was done.
Mm. Well, thank you for that. I love how you approach your work. I do. I mean, you are a very authentic, very genuine person. So you're doing a great service for the world.
Thank you. But everybody, I'm gonna read this again because this is important. The question, "Hanging from a bridge 106 feet above the ground should wake you up." I didn't
Mm.
even get sardonic about it. Normally, I would say, "You think?" I didn't. It's just like, "Oh my." And then I just cleared everything, and I sat down with this book, and it took me a couple of hours because I kept moving sticky notes and going back and forth, but
Mhm.
this book needs to be read by anybody and everybody. I highly recommend it.
Frying pan moments we get in life, right? Get these moments that wake us up, that give us a a much needed wake up call, sometimes over and over again.
That's exactly right. And I wanted to you tell a story about an hour and 17-minute flight and becoming a world-class listener. You know
Mhm.
who else was a world-class listener? Not Gandhi, well, they say Bill Clinton is, but what is his name? The African, he was in jail in Africa
Oh,
for
Mandela, Nelson Mandela.
Nelson Mandela. I could see his face. I knew I just couldn't pull his name, but I've always heard that he was a world-class listener.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he spent 27 years in prison, and, he told people over and over again that it was preparation. It was preparation, and talk about happening to the world, talk about intentionally
Yeah,
who are you
yeah.
becoming. He decided that he had to forgive, otherwise there couldn't be a future. There couldn't be a good future for the people of South Africa. Yeah.
It's amazing. And you had that car accident. It was a major wake-up call for you. Things shifted, and apparently in that moment, but there are so many things in this book. We've got about 10 more minutes. Finally, almost 8 o'clock. What does that mean to you? It's a phrase that just stuck with me. What does it represent? And why is it such a powerful metaphor?
Yeah, so almost 8 o'clock. I was, while I was writing the book, I was traveling a tremendous amount for work. I was doing leadership work with companies, some really big Fortune 500 and some small family businesses, but all over the world. And, I'd be in England for a week, and then I'd be in the Midwest, and I went to 49 of the 50 states for work. And, one time I'm flying, I think it was back from England, and this young woman sitting on the plane next to me, she says, "Oh, what do you do for work?" And I said, "I this, whatever." And she said, "Oh, you travel a lot?" I said, "Yeah." And she said, "My dad traveled a lot." She said he took 100 and I think 172 trips, I think was the number. And I remember looking at her. She was in her 20s. And I said, "How do you know it was 172 trips?" And she said, "Well, he would get me a stuffed animal every time he went on a trip."
Oh, no.
And, yeah, yeah, yeah. And, I'm looking at her like, "Okay." And my kids were pretty young at the time. And I'm looking at her, and she says, but I would rather have had him."
Yeah.
And, frying pan moments, car accidents, hanging from a bridge. there are a lot of things in our lives that really should wake us up, but I tend to be incredible at sometimes ignoring the wake up calls. You know, Robert Frost wrote me a letter once. Well, he didn't really write me a letter, but but I joke that he did because it basically was like, Jonathan, this is what Robert Frost said. He said, "How many things have to happen to you before something occurs to you?"
Right.
And he didn't write it to me. He was dead before I was born, but it's a message I need over and over and over and over again. You know, and that flight and that young lady saying that just really, really, really hit me. And I thought, well, um, if you're gonna be with your kids or be with people you care about, be with them. You know, and that night I got home pretty late. I think I landed at like 11 or so PM, got to the house before like maybe around midnight. My kids were asleep, you know, and I remember sitting on the dining room table and I just took out a bunch of pieces of paper and I marked them with the months of the year. You know, I made basically a big blank piece of paper calendar all over the table. I like to see things. And I'm like, we would do swimming trips with my kids on Friday nights. And this is part of the reason I did this that Friday night. When I was traveling like this, I couldn't swim with them. We would swim at the YMCA on a Friday night. It was open family swim from 6 to 8 PM. And I remember just like putting those pieces of paper on the table and looking at them and thinking, how many Friday nights do I have left where I get to swim with my kids at that open swim? You know, before the day where they don't want to go. Or they say, Dad, can you just kind of drop us off? Or we're doing something else, or we want to go with our friends. You know, and I remember like looking at those pieces of paper and it just gave me a picture. I was like, maybe one in like the summertime, probably not at all because we have stuff going on. But in the fall, back to school, usually the first week or two is crazy. And I had just circled like I'm like probably one Friday in the month of April, you know, and maybe two Fridays in May, and probably no Fridays in July. And I had this little very visual picture of how many Fridays I was going to swim with my kids still. And I decided that from that point forward, when I would go to the YMCA with them, I would actually be there. You know, because the family swim was 6 to 8, and so often, you know, it'd be like 7:30 and I'd be thinking, "Well, it's almost time to wrap it up," you know, and I might get out of the pool at 7:30 or 7:40, and or I might be in the pool, but not really there. And I don't know if you've ever been there. I think all of us have moments like that where you're there, but you're not really there. So
That's more common. Everybody is attached to their phones. I have a rule in my house. If you're here, I'm hosting and I cooked, you leave that phone off.
oh, I love it. I love it.
I'm dead serious. You coming for Thanksgiving, bring, your dishes because you're gonna be taking leftovers. But if I catch you on the phone, you're gonna sit outside with the dog.
I like you. I like you more now than I did a few minutes ago.
Thank you.
Denise, I'm gonna invite you to my house. You can cook. You can cook if you want.
Oh, I cook. I'm a heck of a good cook.
Ah,
But,
and I'm so
put the
glad
phone
you said that
down.
because Denise, I meet so many people who are afraid. They see it, but they're afraid to happen to the world. They're afraid to say that in a family setting, and they let the moment just not exist. You know, they let
Yeah.
the
And
uh,
it's so darn rude.
yeah, yeah,
It is
yeah,
just so rude. So and
yeah.
I'm one of those people, I've got a sign on my door, it's been there for a long time. My house is literally between Hurricanes Katrina and Rita, and I bought my house between those 2 hurricanes. There's a sign on my door, it's half glass, half wood, says, "If you are not invited or expected, don't knock or ring," and I mean it.
Mm.
But you know who does knock and ring? Politicians.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
think they can read.
I think you've come to a pretty sound conclusion.
They're gonna do whatever the heck they want to. And I'll look at them. I'll stand there if the blinds are up, and I'll look them right in the face and give them a little one finger wave, and then I walk off.
Mhm, mhm.
So, but, it's just But, you have to when you're expanding into awareness and you kind of drawing your line in the sand, so to speak, you
Yeah.
have to be
Yeah.
consistent with it.
Yeah. 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 And it gets at a simple question that I think all of us could benefit from. And it's just spending a little bit of time more often than you usually do in quiet and wrestling with, and reflecting on the question of it. If I could be a better person in just one way over the next couple days, even couple minutes, even couple hours, what's one way, and get started and you won't win every time. So often it's really is, can I win a minute or a moment, not necessarily
Hmm,
the whole thing.
good point.
With that almost 8 o'clock, um, I decided that the last few minutes before 8 o'clock in the pool, because it was like family swim till 8, and then they'd set up the lines and people could swim laps, adult swim only, and the kids were kicked out. And I just decided the last few minutes would be the memories that I would create. And I would just look at the clock, and from then on, I looked forward to 7:45 and 7:50, and it honestly, Denise, it took my kids probably 2 Fridays before they realized that, like, whatever they wanted to do the last few minutes in the pool, I'm in. And they would come over and say, "Daddy, can we do" they would, "Can we do dolphin?" Dolphin was a game where I pretended they were a dolphin or they pretended they were dolphins, and I had to help them launch their bodies out of the water and then back in. And, it's a workout and a half,
I bet.
or they loved one called Motorboat, where we'd get these pool noodles, and I'd be the motorboat pulling them, which again is exhausting. You're pulling with this, and of course, it wasn't just them, because all of their friends, if they were there, would hop on the motorboat too, so I'd be pulling a noodle with 3 kids on it, and I'm like, "I could barely turn, I could barely hold the noodle." Um, but it's just that, like, what are little ways that I could remind myself, of the person I wanna be?
Yeah, but listen to how excited you were about those memories. Your voice went up an octave. Did you know that?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you feel it. Yeah, and you'll
you
you'll feel it.
do.
Mm.
Listen, ooh, Jonathan, we are about to run out of time, but I know you're coming back again. For people listening who have not had a dramatic wake up call like you did, but maybe feel something is off, what should they be paying attention to?
Um, there's a question I started asking somewhere in that journey that really helps still, and it's this: 10 years from now, what will I wish I had done today? And that question, it it helps remind me that, because 10 years goes like that. We all know it. You could think back 10 years in your life and you go, "Wow, I can't believe that's 10 years ago already." Look up pictures 10 years ago. But it's just a simple question: 10 years from now, what will I wish I had done today? If there's one other thing, I would say get a person in your life who will ask the question of who am I becoming with you? Because we all desperately need good people to do life with. And if you have a friend, all of us have one or two friends who, I wouldn't be the person I am without that friend. Without the conversations I have with that friend, without the example that friend sets, without the hard questions that friend asks, without the reality checks that friend gives me. And either spend more time with that friend or go get one more.
Ooh, go get one more.
Mm, yeah,
Well, that's something I hadn't thought of. Okay, I
yeah,
wrote that down.
yeah.
Jonathan, this has been a powerful and thought provoking question and conversation, rather. And I've been scribbling like crazy. I've got 3 pages on my little notebook, things I was thinking and, want to ask you the next time you come up. But before we wrap up, where can our listeners find you, connect with you, and of course, get a copy of Who Are You Becoming? Did I say earlier I highly recommend this book? I'll say it again. Get the book.
Sure. Yeah. Just Google Jonathan Fanning, or my website is my name, jonathanfanning.com. If you Google "Who Are You Becoming," I think you'll find it too. You can find it online wherever, in audio as well. So, and if you go to my website, my name, jonathanfanning.com, we do quite regularly we'll do little "Who are you becoming" challenges, and there's a few of them on there. So if you go on there, you'll find at least one right away. And sometimes they're around a building courage boot camp. Sometimes they're around, I'd love to have more clarity in my life, or I'd love to make my connections in life more meaningful, more memorable. So join one of those, and you'll hear from me. And we make a ton of little video clips that will challenge and inspire and get you thinking. And I get to travel all over the world, so we film a lot of those all over the world. But they're really designed to help us have aha moments, help us have frying pan moments, and inspire us to get a little closer, give us some challenges that'll help us get a little closer to who we can be.
I'm heading over there. Do you have a final thought that you'd like to share with our audience before I reluctantly let you go? Something they can carry with them after this conversation ends?
Yeah, I would just say this, that the quality of our lives hinges on the quality of the questions we pursue. And when I choose to pursue a little bit better question, it changes everything. It's like you could call it a first domino. Like the dominoes are moving and you're like, I'm taking this one out of the line and I'm choosing a path. When you pick one better question, shifts
Yeah.
everything.
It does, and you're kind of talking about what I think about all the time, which is curiosity.
Mm.
I'm a reader, I'm a thinker, I'm an autodidact, I'm always thinking, and curiosity is probably my besetting sin, but I'm not going maybe not, yeah, but curiosity, especially about yourself, who you are, what you're becoming, where you are now, where you want to be, how can you be of service to other people? Curiosity, get curious.
Mhm. Yeah, in our next conversation, we'll talk about one of my books called Creativity Unleashed, and we studied world-class innovators, and are incredibly curious, and a lot of them are intentionally incredibly curious. Not just naturally, but they will feed that curiosity. So looking forward to that conversation.
See, now you know I read your other book too.
I do. I've said it before, but you are phenomenal at what you do. I really appreciate you for choosing to do it.
Oh, thank you. This is how, as I mentioned, I am an introvert. I'm highly committed. I'm very, very good at it. But I started this thing 18 years ago because I love to read. I mean, I'll read the back of a cereal box if that's in front of me, and I don't eat cereal, so I never know how I find a cereal box. But if it's there, I'll read it. But I get to meet people like you from all over the world. I get to read your books. I have thousands of them here in my office. And in so many ways, you become my mentors. You're a mentor.
Mm, yeah.
So anyway, well, listen, everybody. We what he shared today was a powerful reminder that success isn't I can't talk. Didn't I mention that at the top of the show? Isn't just about what we accomplish. It's about who we are in the process of becoming. And Jonathan Fanning challenged us to wake up, pay attention, and take ownership of our direction, to listen better, to act with intention, and to stop waiting for someday. We're coming up on wedding season. Everybody's, oh, once we're married, we're going to be happy. Oh boy, I won't even go down that road, but you know what I mean. So act with intention and stop waiting for someday, because the truth is, you are becoming someone every single day. And the question that you should be asking yourself, is it by design or by default? So thank you for joining us on Your Part in Success Radio. And if you found value in today's conversation, and I know you did, because I sure did, be sure to subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it, and connect with Jonathan Fanning. Get his books. Seriously, Jonathan, thank you so much, and I'll see you in about another week or so.
Great. Thank you, Denise.
Oh, my pleasure. I have really enjoyed this conversation. I'll talk to you again.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffitts at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.